Greetings, comrade. Welcome back. So this is going to be a bit of an interesting video because as I was going about prepping for this video, I kind of remembered I find this module a little awkward. And so I've actually kind of done some functions that I wish existed, and I'll be showing them to you here. And they will kind of as we'll see, there are some. They will look like they're not working, but actually, that's a due to an issue with JSADL warp, which is being used in our development environment, which is not really that critical an issue. Um, and it in an ideal world, there's no such thing as an issue, but of course there will be issues. And so, as Obelisk is an open source repository, there is work to be done, but it doesn't really matter at the end of the day. Just I have to kind of make that point. And so, just gonna delete that because that was to test it. So yeah, let's start by looking at the actual Reflex DOM.xhr. So I have Hugel open or Hugel server running, and this is. Oh, I'm so out of it. What am I saying? So basically, we have the core data type that we're working with is tickinfo, and I think this is a really interesting way to learn a bit more about FRP. Time in FRP is kind of an interesting thing, in that we have to make it respond to an event. And so, for example, we'll see, so there's tickLossy and tickLossy from. tickLossy from post build time. All of these, hopefully you've watched the other tutorials on events. I imagine you would need to learn about events before doing this. I can't possibly see a way to not, um, you can, yeah. So go watch that video if you haven't watched it yet. But basically, it's all just about starting from a certain event. And so we have another number of functions here to make that happen. And so, the one that kind of got me thinking was this tickLossy from post build time, because it's the only one that only requires a nominal diff time, but it's stuck with the post build event. And so, what do I mean by the post build event? Well, it might just be easier to show you here. We can do this function get post build, and what it is it's an event that will fire whenever we are finished building that DOM element. So if I have, a div and I have a get post build in that div, once that div is built, then the get post build event will fire, and here we call it post build. So I guess I'll just kind of call it the post build event, which we can get. And so, and you'll see this next line here, and this really illustrates a lot about the time module, is that we have to get the current time. And so as I said, we're getting, with FRP and time, it's kind of in response to something, right? It has to be in response to something, but if I click something, that doesn't necessarily, it doesn't necessarily, it definitely means, that we don't have time just because we click something, right? All we have is information that we clicked, and as well as whatever else we sort of attach to that event, in our code and how we write that. Yeah, so in order to get the time, what you'll always see when you're doing reflex is that you have to effectively do a line like this. So what's going on here is that we're using performEvent, and I'm just going to open it up in a nicer way. So performEvent is kind of like our lift IO. And someone might be screaming somewhere for me saying that. I don't know. But it's very, very similar to a lift IO. I'm going to not click on the source. I might do that after just to kind of, understand a bit more about it. But it's similar to our lift IO in the sense that we actually can't do lift IO. And so any other time I've seen where we can't do lift IO, it's because there's no actual relation to IO in that monad. For example, if we're just in a simple maybe monad, right? Because again, maybe the data type maybe is a monad. There. Right? And it just looks like this, but we can use, of course, use do syntax to go through a bunch of monadic statements that are of the type maybe. And we couldn't do lift IO in this case. We couldn't do print. It's in a sense like a pure monad. And the only really impure monad is IO. So and that it's kind of the point of the IO monad, as well as ordering and structuring, because we're doing something impure. So therefore, ordering of events is very, very important. Everything else in Haskell can be reorganized in whatever way is most efficient, right? The GHC can do some aggressive compilation, while doing compilation. Can do some aggressive optimization, is what I mean to say. And so, of course, now if we expand this and we have a maybe T monad, which is parameterized with maybe, then it's not going to matter. Like, it still can't do I/O. It would only be able to do I/O if at some point we had I/O as the base monad, so that what we end up with is effectively, in terms of the data type wrappers level, and now we're not going to see actually an I/O wrapper in our code, but there is effectively, and I think there's even like an I/O hashtag that exists, and well, never mind, it's actually a little bit more complicated than that. It's more looks more like state, but you know, if we cannot, if we, the main point is, if we don't have IO in our monad or in our monad transformer stack, then we can't do it. We can't do IO, I mean to say. And so I was a little surprised that there isn't actually IO for Reflex. I'm not even sure if that's fair to say. But I believe what it is that the base monad that we are talking about is the spider timeline, and so the spider timeline is similar to IO. It's not actually IO, but it's more so and the IO context. But these impure side effects are just handled in a very particular way that it's almost like we're not doing IO at all. Although we do need IO, of course, to make the actual implementation of Reflex happen. So so that's a lot of unimportant information, honestly. If you didn't get that, you know what? Just I didn't know what this meant for a while, so just you're good. And all we need to do is provide it with something of this type. And so we again see another data type constructor, or sorry, a data family, or in this case type family, because we're using the type keyword. And largely, this is just a it's just a wrapper. I don't even get the point, to be honest. Um, I'm sure there's a point, but I don't get it. And the M is coming from here, so you can largely just ignore this whole performable if you don't, unless maybe you do get it and you see the point and you're like, this guy's an idiot, and fair enough to you. I encourage you to start a YouTube channel, quite literally. Um, you know. So, anyways, I'm not joking about that, but seriously, like it would be great to have more. Um, but so yeah. So anyways, we have this MA here is going to be, as we'll see, something of the type, um, that fits lift.io. So um, just curious here, actually. Oh, this kind of explains it. If you understand that, good for you. If not, you don't really need to. But anyway, so basically what we're doing here is I/O, but I/O that is not necessarily limited to just being the plain I/O monad. It may be something like this, maybe T I/O-A, and that's how we would have to get the current time, um, to work with. Um, especially, and there are some options here. Like we don't need to, um, for example, delay. We don't have to really do anything about the current time. Um, but the awkward part about this module, in my humble opinion, is that it uses it forces you to give UTC time, which you would have to do effectively through this statement here. And so, anyways, what is that statement that we were doing? Um, um, well, I have it in a couple places. So, oh yeah, this is the one I was looking at. So, just to be clear, get current time is from the data.time.clock module, which also reminds me that we will need in our frontend.cabal the time package. Hopefully, if you've run into that issue by now, my channel has helped you enough to kind of figure out, um, you know, well, really, I haven't talked about that, so maybe you have the experience to kind of figure that out. Maybe the issue came up here, I hope, and then you figured it out yourself, I hope. But if not, that is there. Anyways, so get current time. Where's the actual one? This one. I don't know what those other ones were, but I think they're deprecated. But anyways, so this is just simply like we could do this in any thing. I could open up a REPL here. I'm not going to just because I'm lazy. I encourage you to open up a REPL and try out get current time and just a normal REPL. It will get the current time and it will be of this data structure where we have the day. I think does it show here? No. Oh, because I have to refresh it. Yes, it looks exactly like this. And so here's our, time of the day. This is not even correct, but I guess you guys wouldn't know that because how would you know that my clock is wrong on my computer? But so it's going to get the system time, which in my case is just wrong. It is currently the 17th at 8:39. Um, and so, yeah. And so that brings us to here. And so why do we need this whole statement to begin with? Why can't we just do get current time? Well, and that's because, um, something that is I/O is going to fit into that performable sort of monad, right? So the performable constructor is specifically talking about the M, not the MA. And so I guess, you know, um, if and so I guess it fits these other constraints. I'm not sure what specifically to say about I/O here, but I know that we have to use this to do a specific I/O action, and we have to do that I/O action in response to something. So we still can't make this I/O the sort of origin event. But the origin event that we have here and that I'm using is just a click. So we have a button, and every time this clicks, oh, this is getting the current time. What the heck? Interesting. Um, I don't know why that's now working. It shouldn't, like, it may or may not work in JSTL Warp, I guess. But if you do deploy, which you can find by going to the obelisk repository, and it is right here. If you follow these instructions and build your app, you will see that um, it does, in fact, change every single time that we click this. But for some reason, it does not here. And that's because there's a different backend that is actually handling the JavaScript. And yeah. Which I guess we haven't covered yet, but we'll see. There's a couple of different ways we work with JavaScript. So, um, anyways, and so yeah, this is kind of like just there's no other way around doing this function here. So my thinking was, why don't we have something like this tickLossy from, and so I think this is something I plan to upstream myself, uh, and this one is not going to, well, it is going to work, just the same issue of it doesn't update each click. It can only, yeah. But in production, or in the, production style build, it will work. And that's just because of something to do with get current time and performEvent. Um, and so, yeah. So as you can see, I've obviously used that statement here a couple times, and we have a nominal diff time an event, and then nominal diff time an event, and so both of these are just so one is providing a tick info from an event, and so if we look at that, which I have here. So I used, and I encourage you to, I'm just going to stop it here so you can pause it if you want to copy these functions. I will explain them in a second, but in case you want to, yeah. And so I use this, where's my tickLossy phone? Did I delete it? Maybe I did. Okay, so, oh, I'm an idiot, it's right here. And I'm going to hide this for now. And I'm not running anything. So, so this button emits a click event, and we start this tickLossy from double prime. I called it double prime because there's already a function prime of tickLossy from, and this still requires the UTC time. So this tickLossy from is just automatically doing that for you, because that's just a yeah. It's not easy to learn or figure out for new beginners. So yeah. Um, oh, and now this is complaining because I have some pseudocode here. So if we just do that, and in terms of imports, I have also added these three to be clear. Um, And so why this is changing so fast is you can see I have set the interval to be 0.001. So every 0.0001 seconds, it is going to sample the system time. Um, and that's actually nothing to do with how I've set this up. But that's what the nominal diff in time actually does for any of these functions for tickLossy from. I'm actually quite literally just passing interval to tickLossy from prime. And I think the only real difference between tickLossy from and tickLossy from prime is that these are just effectively, these have been f-mapped, put into a tuple and then f-mapped into the A. And the f-map function, not quite f-map, but the f-map with replace. And so if we change this now, and make it 1, we can see it slows down quite a lot. And since it's so slow, it kind of looks a little laggy. Um, and so this is just counting the number of samples, number of times that it's checked for the system time. And yeah. This is the actual time currently, but it also doesn't give us a sense of how long it's been. So, like, that seems like a kind of missing piece. And this time info already elapsed. I'm not even sure what that is, to be honest. I think it has something to do with the I don't know. I will not comment. So that's why I built this tickLossy from, which wait. Oh wait, no, so this is tickLossy from. What am I saying? The count time from is just exactly what I was kind of thinking of. So how I do this, and I'll demo it first, and then I'll talk about how I did that. Am I just blind? Yes, I am. And I still need this. And now we have this timer. And so, oh, okay, there we go. But see, yeah, there's something weird going on there. That's a bug. But it is what it is. This is now just working. Okay, cool. I'll take it. And then it stops like that. But it could be stopping because it's something I'm doing here. I just wrote this function. I haven't really done much QA of it, Um, and so yeah, but anyways, so how I'm doing this is I start by our go to little get current time methodology, and then I use full dyn. So the reason I'm using this was actually because I started with trying to combine two events. And so there is a functor instance for event, but there is no applicative instance for event. I do not believe. And I do not believe because otherwise this would work. If we look at this, it says cannot deduce applicative event t, which doesn't seem like I'm just doing something wrong. Looks more so like that's just actually the case. So, um, some cases when you see this in obelisk, especially, like if I was to say here, that I could not deduce monad hold, that's going to complain because full dine requires monad hold, and so that's a bit of a different could not deduce. Um, in the sense that all I had to do is just specify that yes, it can deduce it, or it should deduce it. I don't know, but yeah. And so now, anyways, so that's why I have the full dine, and because I want to turn this to a dynamic, and I thought this was kind of cool. I used the full dine, and this full dine should only fire once for each click, right? And all the point of it is to downgrade from an event to a dynamic to eventually a behavior. And so that's because we can now have it work with the tickLossy from event, right? And so every single time that when we saw it last time, where it was keeping track of the tick info, the number of ticks. Each time that it was updating the number of ticks, it was telling us how many times it sampled the system time. And so that is the structure of an event. And so that's the event that is going to also cause this to show up here, right? So each time that even these digits here are changing, that's an event. And so we're effectively saying to fire this event at this interval of time. And yeah, and so this is really just the same thing we kind of did before, except now we've parameterized interval. And I have to use tuple sections to make this happen because I am only filling in the one here. This would be no problem if I had that, just a plain tuple. But to make the syntax a little bit easier, using tuple sections, and that will fmap over event time and put the event time, which is UTC time. So what ends up here will be of the type UTC time. And then we'll have an interval and UTC time, which fits this tickLossy from function. Yeah. And so then lastly, I use attach with to grab the. So what is attach with? Let's just go to attach with. So attach with is basically, it's like tag in that, so tag, what's going on with tag is whenever the event fires, it samples the behavior, right? So this event, like with attach with, this event is sampling the behavior, except instead of destroying the value in the event, we want to add it, or not add it, I shouldn't say add, but we want to put it together in some way. And that will result in a third type, possibly a third type, right? We don't, if you remember type signatures, all this is saying is that they don't have to be the same type, but that A has to be the same type as this, because it's coming from there. And B has to be the same type as this, and so, yeah, we can produce a third type, which will be ultimately of the type event TC. And then we add pure because we are in some monad which fits all of these constraints. And so, a note about that is that this is kind of the first time, too, we're seeing a lot of constraints like this, because typically we're working out of this here. And so it won't necessarily force you to specify what's going on. But yeah, there is like a lot of different. There's a couple different monads that can fit into this, and my understanding of why there is such, you know, such use of classes is, just to be able to generalize this to a number of different platforms. and situations. I don't really know, but yeah. Like if I had to say what, well, I really couldn't say what the actual underlying monad transformer would be. I know how I can find out, and I've actually looked at that file before, but and the reason it's even specified in this case is because of using obelisk. Um, we can use reflex for almost anything that as long as we build the event system, the core event system. Like for example, there's Reflex SDL, which is working with SDL events instead of DOM events. Um, and yeah, I believe Reflex FRP also has other examples. The site has other examples, I believe. But I think it is good to kind of mention this. Let me find it first. So yeah, I don't know why I thought I needed to find it. I have Google open, and so this is the actual. This is massive, and this is also using a language extension. So it might look a little confusing. Um, even without the language extension, probably looks confusing. This is just a lot to take in, but it's a little nicer this way. These are all of the constraints for what works with the obelisk framework. So any monad or any T route M that fits this monad, or sorry, fits this this head and this body, or therefore this head, um, is effectively valid in terms of reflex obelisk. Um, And so, actually, you know what? I'm wrong. I am wrong. In the context of obelisk, the actual transformer that we're using is routed T, um, and well, other transformers as well. But yeah, so you could look into that if you are curious. Might even get into that with our routing tutorial when that comes up. But yeah, and so I believe that's just about it. Besides saying that we talked about changing the interval, and this is a common pattern, um, and we're just simply like kind of business as usual, just taking this time from of being an event here, and then converting it to text. And so this event, as I said, is going to be firing right. This event is going to be firing every 0.01 seconds, and updating the value every single time that value is updated. This being the value, then it's going to update the sorry, this is the event, and so it's going to change the dynamic here. I'm just being a little quick with it and saying basically this. If that confused you, well, literally this. Um, and so yeah. And assuming you watch my Monads tutorial, that makes sense. And so yeah, that's really all there is to say. And I hope you enjoyed. Um, yeah, there are other functions, of course, in here. I haven't looked at Poisson. Uh, delay is also a useful function, and so I've used delay to what I want to do. Well, actually, I think that was a bit of a hack, so I won't talk about that. But yeah, delay might also be another useful function. It's actually quite simple to use because it only requires you to give the event a nominal diff time, just like we kind of built with our function. So yeah, and the other ones I don't. Yeah, I just don't know, but I haven't actually used them, so I won't comment on them. Feel free to explore them. And bon voyage.